forces in urban areas and some places, right? We started to experiment with doing what they call some amount of a close to hub, some amount of gig economy, right? So all those models seem to have taken place. Companies have started to look at managing the costs better, which has always been the case, while innovating the ways that they can do business. And as the joke goes, right, the chief innovation officer award for 2020 kind of goes to the pandemic and to the coronavirus, because across the industries, including event management, including consulting, including training, including companies like COPC, right, we've kind of reinvented a lot of models for ourselves, virtual, kind of work, remote kind of work. So that, seems to be in place. This is general knowledge. I think all of us have been living, breathing this for the last 8 to 9 months. But the problem is it's easier said than done, isn't it? When I want to talk to you about this, right, I would like you to, as a takeaway, right, maybe if you want to just remember, think about, I would like you to think about 4 numbers, 4 statistics. The first one is 2. And what is that number? That is about the reported use of self-service in the last 1 year seems to have gone up by almost a double, from a 40% to about 78%. This is based on some of the research that COPC conducts. So we conduct research each year called Cxmb, Customer Experience Management Benchmarks. This research is available for anybody who is interested. You can reach out to me, or Anup, who is also logged into this call. Please reach out and we'll be happy to share that with you. But what we find is that year on year, and now we have data for about 5 to 6 years, and what we find is that the reported use of self-service has suddenly taken a upward trend, turn in the last year, because of all sorts of movement restrictions and challenges that we had for the last year. But now here is the concerning part. The concerning part is that when we were doing this research, we also asked the customers, would you prefer to use self-service in your next interaction, in your next transaction? And this is the challenge that we see. What we see is that there is an ongoing trend of customers preferring to actually use a human-assisted channels. So when we ask, would you prefer for your next interaction, would you prefer to have self-service? The number actually has gone up from a 48% to a 68%. This is kind of a dichotomy, isn't it? That customers are using self-service, but so what they are doing versus what they are feeling, there is a bit of a difference. And I think most of us know the reasons for it. There are different ways of putting the reasons in front. But let me kind of put 3 things in front of you. And these are the 2 other numbers that I would like you to kind of just look at. Right? So one is in terms of one of the big reasons that we typically see in terms of people trying to move away is the low resolution rates in some of our digital channels. The number is like about 69% in terms of resolution, whereas in human assisted channels, the number is around 60, so 86 or something like that. So there's like a 17-point gap between human assisted channels versus self-service, self-assisted channels. Okay. The other thing that you will find is in terms of the lack of choice for using digital channels. Customers who are forced to use a digital channel and then they have a problem in getting their resolution are 7 times, not just twice, not just in terms of percentage, they are 7 times more unhappy. The dissatisfaction rises about 7 times if you are forcing customers to use a digital channel. And I think part of the reason is that there is an intrinsic need, right, for empathy during the customer experience interaction. Now, how do we kind of put that together? And I'll just take one last, slide to put this across to you. So what are the typical strategies that we see within the industries that kind of are driving us for the future, right? One of them is obviously we see is to have that agility, right, in adopting digital channels, self-service, as a new normal, as something that is already given. We also find that there is a decent amount of advancement in technology in terms of artificial intelligence, even things like natural language processing, which leads to conversational UI, making the customer experience more personalized, more seamless. Um, We've also started to see that people have moved away from looking at simply contacts, calls, mails, chats, social media, to looking at what we call service journey, which is an end-to-end path that your customer takes across touch points, across channels, right? That helps you to link, right? What is happening backstage, what is happening front stage, right? And to a certain extent, that then leads to also to continue to drive innovation by identifying what are the failure demands that we have within this and try to reduce, right, some of those in order to improve our simplicity. So in general, right, we will typically find that that is what you would see. And the last kind of pattern or strategies that we see people looking at is to how we can humanize your customer experience and how can you build the what we call empathy or desire to resolve, right, if within the design of the customer experience itself, right at the start, right? Because all of us understand that it's not magic. It doesn't happen just like that, right? It needs to be kind of deployed. It needs to be done in the right manner. So I'm hoping that today's sessions that we are currently going to go through, right, and we have a great lineup. I have quite a lot of people that I know from the industry, very good friends, joining us today in terms of panel discussions and in terms of sharing their thoughts and ideas. So I'll be very keen to kind of sharing and sitting with you, listening to them, and hoping to learn from all of them, right? So again, once again, Nitin and Nisha, thank you for the opportunity. I'm here to take any questions in case anybody has them.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you for that. And thank you for setting the stage for today's session. And it helps us, move in very nicely into the next session, which is the fireside chat. We'll be keeping questions to the, end of the session to make full use of all of the participants and all of the people here today. So the fireside chat on enhancing CX through WhatsApp Business API will be hosted by Mr. Rachit Ranjan, and our special guest will be fending his questions will be Mr. Rishikesh Patankar. Mr. Ranjan is currently the Public Policy Manager for WhatsApp in India. Previously, he was the head of public policy at Uber India for Federal Affairs. Rachit is a lawyer by training and also an alumnus of National University of Judicial Sciences and UC Berkeley School of Law. His guest, Mr. Patankar, has more than 20 years of experience in ICT, including stints at National Government R&D Lab, top universities abroad, and the Indian Navy. He holds 3 master's degrees and manages large-scale multiple projects in the ICT domain. An avid cyclist, swimmer, and runner, Mr. Patankar serves as a Chief Operating Officer in CSC E-Governance Services India Limited, a SPV under Ministry of Electronics and IT, looking after education, skill development, and CSC Academy. So I'd like to welcome both to the stage, and you have the stage for the next 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, Nisha, and a warm welcome to everyone who's joined the event. And a special thank you to Mr. Patankar for kindly agreeing to this conversation. We will keep the conversation limited to 4 or 5 questions, Mr. Patankar, but we broadly want to understand your approach as CSC in the delivery of effective communications and the various tools that you would employ to reach out to your intended beneficiaries across the country. So without standing on ceremony, I'd kick off with the first question here. Mr. Patankar, so delivering your message to your intended audience is a key essential to driving effective communication. How are you delivering information to those who need it, especially in an era where people are becoming more empowered to be selective in their approach? I think we saw a brilliant presentation from Shrikant earlier to see the changes that we are seeing in communication patterns. So from that perspective, what tools and technologies do you think organizations and service providers should use to engage stakeholders to create a value-added experience?
Yeah, thank you, Rajit. And in fact, if you see, India's digital canvas is continuously increasing. We have largest number of biometric uh, identity in the country, as well as largest number of Android app downloads, which are happening in the country. So digital canvas is wide and is continuously expanding. And information needs to be uh, sent to the people who want it. And your message should be very clear and concise so that people can basically get empowered through it. CSCs, in fact, have large network. As you are aware, we are 3.75 plus common service center, and most of the central government as well as state government ministries are implementing their flagship programs through the common service centers. So it becomes very important in order to pass on the correct message to both our village level entrepreneurs who are basically the backbone or the digital soldiers, as we call them, and then to the citizens, so that citizens can come and get the information or get the service delivery. So that is the biggest or the largest challenge. And right kind of information at the right time should flow. That is also very important. And country as diverse as India, where number of states, districts are nearly 700 plus, more than 6,500 blocks or talukas are there, and 2.5 lakh gram panchayats and 6.5 lakh villages. So if you want to convey information or convey message, it becomes very important that we use technology, and that becomes important. And also, I believe the multilingual factor of the information becomes important, because locally we need to have local dialects, local language. So multilingual is the key word here. The technology which supports multilingual is important, as well as multimodal. We need not be into one particular format. We need to provide citizens as well as people across the country information at various with various modes, so that they can understand, they can grasp, and they can take decisions. Personalized information again becomes important. That is a concept which is used in education or teaching or learning management systems, but people would like to have a personalized kind of message. That becomes important. And we have seen social media tools are powerful, and right kind of information, if delivered, can do wonders. We are seeing in COVID-19 vaccination drive, where district administration is providing messages, then central government is providing messages, and we have seen the success of that story as well. Also, critical information needs to be taken care of, because wrong information or false information, if it goes, then it becomes a hurdle. So I think that is the challenge right now, but technology will surely help us in doing that.
And in the context of effective personalized communication, given the fact that Common Services Centers runs a host of schemes across the country, when you started the project to integrate with WhatsApp, in terms of your experience, how convenient was it for CSC to integrate WhatsApp to its existing communication channels?
Uh, in fact, if you see, we have a number of VLEs, nearly 3.75 lakh, as I mentioned. 6,000 VLEs at the block level who are working in different areas. And it is important that we send the information to them. And integrating WhatsApp was a decision taken by the management, and I think that has done wonders, because we are able to send information to stakeholders using this tool. Also, the chatbot which we have integrated for two of our projects, the largest digital literacy mission of the world, Pradhan Mantri Gramin Digital Saksharta Abhiyan, as well as the Digital Beti initiative, where empowerment of women is being done. Nearly 2.5 lakh women were trained on digital marketing and digital skills. I think that that is very useful, because this integration was very smooth, and when we were interacting with the WhatsApp team, I think they clearly mentioned us what are the milestones and how it will be used. The POC was shown to us, and I think it was remarkable. I think it was converted in a record time, and I think that becomes very important, that you understand the technology and you also implement and see the technology working. I think that is basically the real empowerment.
And Mr. Patankar, could I just request you to elaborate a little more on the use cases that you have currently activated on WhatsApp? You alluded to the digital literacy and the digital Beti programs, but for the benefit of the audience, if you could elaborate a little more on that, and what's been the stakeholder reaction to the communication with the chatbots that have been rolled out by CSC on?
Yeah, in fact, as I mentioned, we have rolled out two use cases. One is called PMG Disha, or Pradhan Mantri Gramin Digital Saksharta Abhiyan. It is also available on www.pmgdisha.in. Details are available there. It's the world's largest program, where we are basically training and certifying 6 crore or 60 million people in the rural areas. It's basically awareness on digital literacy, how to use computers, laptops, how to use mobile phones, how to do how to use financial payments modes. Also, the citizen-centric services are available in the course. It is a 20 hours course, and our aim is to cover all the gram panchayats and all the villages, so that rural population is empowered through digital literacy. This program basically covers nearly 40% of the rural population, and still nearly 60% of rural population is still left behind. But there are various other schemes which are covering them. So Pradhan Mantri Gramin Digital Saksharta Abhiyan is basically for rural citizens to get access to the Digital India program, get trained on digital literacy, and use that digital literacy in their social life, as well as in their day-to-day life, so that they become empowered. The second intervention over here is called the Digital Beti program, which we are running in support with Facebook, where our 5,000 centers across the country in 10 states were supposed to train 50 women budding entrepreneurs. And through this, we gave them training on digital marketing, digital skills, and how to use Facebook for marketing. And I think that has been a great step, because many women were empowered through this program. And the whole customer experience, or the last beneficiary experience, has been wonderful, because we are getting feedback from both our village level entrepreneurs who are basically implementing that program, as well as the beneficiaries who have got impacted from the program. There are certain challenges on the user's ability to use this system, as Shrikant was mentioning, that I think the human contact becomes important. So human contact is there. We are doing it in a blended fashion, and the chatbots are here to stay, because more or less it is information dissemination. But later part, when transactions are also integrated into that, I think that will create wonders, because you can get your transaction details through chatbot. I think that will help us in order to deliver personalized as well as specific information to the end customer or the beneficiary. So this important aspect is, I think, will surely help us.
Thank you, Mr. Patankar, and I think this is a good segue to my follow-up questions on this. When you were launching the WhatsApp API for CSC, I think external communication and engagement with your stakeholder base would have played a very important role. So how did you make stakeholders aware that you're available on WhatsApp to ensure that there is maximum engagement with the account?
So it is done both on traditional as well as using technology. So we do both traditional ways of sending information that this is the WhatsApp API number and for this scheme. So there are a lot of technology which we have used. In fact, our digital Seva portal, that is the integrated portal for all our village level entrepreneurs. We have flashed messages over there. We have WhatsApp groups for each state and each district, and all the information was sent to all of them, including a lot of e-newsletters which we send daily to our stakeholders. So that was the information. Also, the project portals as well as all our apps had a pop-up message saying that this is the number which needs to be used for getting the information. So yes, we have been using traditional methods of communication, as well as we have been using technology in order to tell or convey our messages to our stakeholders. So social media, we have put in a lot of information so that people are aware. Email, outbound calls we are doing, and that pop-up messaging we have been doing, and that has basically fairly done. This mechanism has fairly done well. I think a lot of people have information, but still we see that many people do not have the kind of information we would like to have, because when you pass on information from one channel to another channel, or at the lower end, say for your passing the information from central to maybe a state to a district, so that information kindly becomes slightly distorted. So we would like to have a foolproof system, because what we convey goes to the ground. That becomes very important, I think. And that is a challenge also. And it is a problem for us, but we are trying to mitigate that, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Padangar. And my one last question is to the last point that you made, that and also something that came out of the study that Shrikant was alluding to in his presentation, that how do you see the future of this sort of communication, and in terms of CSC's roadmap on adoption of an omni-channel journey, the service agnostic journey that you think of, to take the engagement and experience to the next level for your intended beneficiaries? I think we have lost Mr. Patankar briefly.
Yeah, I think he's trying to connect back in. I think he's having some difficulty. So in the interest of time, Mr. Ranjan, is it okay if we move to the next session?
Yeah. Yes, I'm there.
All right, so we had one last
Audible?
question. Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay.
One last question from Mr. Ranjan, sir.
Yes, I was saying that I think interaction, say for example, interaction in families, like personal and emotional, becomes important. So that is the key. I think if we can include the personalized information, that is important. If we can give this information, as well as a lot of stakeholders, including government, has recognized the usage of these platforms for connecting to the beneficiaries as well as to the customers. We have seen banking industry doing this. We have seen the food and beverage industry right now doing it. Insurance companies are already doing it. I think there's a huge opportunity, and I think the technology, the chatbot and other technologies are here to stay, and this omni-channel platform will surely help give a better customer experience to the organizations. And I hope that this popularity amongst the government also will surely help citizens to get the desired services at the right place and at the right time.
Wonderful. That's wonderful to hear, Mr. Patankar, and we look forward to continuing our partnership with you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you, Ji. Thank you, Neena Ji. Thank you.
Over to you, Nisha.
Thank you so much. It's really fantastic to see, public-private partnership delivering prosperity and addressing key issues in India. Thank you both for that very interesting session. We'd like to move on to the next segment today, which is the panel discussion on adapting to an evolving normal with omni-channel customer engagement, hosted by Shraddha Thapa. On her behalf, I would like to welcome our panel guests, Mr. Manish Vora, Mr. Venkatesh Kidambi, Mr. Arindam De Sarkar, and Mr. Amol Gupta. A brief round of introductions before Ms. Thapa takes over. Ms. Thapa has more than 14 years of organizational experience in the messaging space. Currently, she manages and assists with new products for Infobip across India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Nepal, working on new solutions like WhatsApp Business APIs, conversation platform, and the likes with product partners like WhatsApp and Google. Mr. Manish Vora, our guest, is a digital engagement evangelist with extensive experience across banking, financial services, insurance, and telecom. He heads customer service for SBI Card, the second largest card issuer in the country, where he leads digital transformation across customer experience, cross and upsell, and operations. Mr. Venkatesh Kidambi, the global head of digital marketing platform and CRM at Kimberly-Clark, brings with him 16 years of experience in brand building, digital transformation, CRM, and analytics on a global scale. Mr. Amol Gupta joins us from 99 Acres, where he serves as the Vice President, Process Audits. He loves to design processes, which means scalability, flexibility, and personalization in fast-evolving high-tech industries. And last but not least, we'd like to welcome Mr. Arindam De Sarkar, who is the DGM of Service Excellence and Hospitality at Woodlands Multi-Speciality Hospital Limited, whose experience spans 19 years as a healthcare experience expert. So let's give them all a warm welcome. And Ms. Thapa, over to you to kick off this panel discussion. You have the next 30 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nisha. I hope everyone can hear me. Can I request my esteemed panelists to turn on their cameras? We have, okay. So very good evening, all of you. It's a pleasure to host you for this panel discussion. The topic of our discussion today is adapting to an evolving normal with omni-channel customer engagement. So the word disruption has taken an entirely new meaning as the world navigates through this pandemic phase. Even though COVID-19 has shifted a significant amount of customer traffic to digital channels, but some customers just won't let go their traditional channels. Hence, adopting the blended traditional and digital has become a must-do for enterprises. To adapt to evolving customer behavior and preferences, businesses are now evaluating different omni-channel offerings and opportunities to innovate and fill in the gaps. Omni-channel platforms actually bring in the convenience, and they offer a great opportunity to meet customer expectation. And let me share some numbers with you. According to McKinsey reports, we have 1 billion mobile subscribers, 500 million online, 300 million on social media. So, if you see, India is the largest and the fastest digitally enabled market. And with rapid digitization, with internet penetration, mobile penetration at this scale, we do have a lot of enabling and catching up to do. And to master omni-channel marketing, I think it'll be really good for the customer experience that we want to create and the whole ecosystem, as we are moving towards better customer experiences. And this is what the topic is all about. So to kickstart my discussion, I would actually like to ask Amol, real estate is a very scattered in terms of stakeholders. There are builders, there are distributors, there are stock brokers. I mean, there are brokers. So how do you think you will kind of enhance customer experience in this era?
Yeah, Shraddha, you are absolutely right when you mention that real estate is a distributed space with a lot of stakeholders involved, brokers, builders, marketing executives, and so on. We estimate around there would be around 15,000 brokers in the top markets, the metro markets, and because of which there is a lot of information asymmetry, out. Right. And how does this information asymmetry impacts a real estate buyer? Let's understand the customer journey. So for example, a customer wants to buy a home. So the first step that he'll do is he'll do some market research. And that market research would be to understand uh, in his budget, whatever he has, what kind of configuration he will be able to afford, what are the projects, what are the localities where he'll be able to afford to. Once he has done that, he'll shortlist some of the localities where his budget allows, and then he will start making contacts with the sellers. Either they can be brokers, they can be builders, or they can even be owners. Now, once he has done that, he'll make the site visits, and then the deal is done. However, in the first two steps of of the journey, there is a lot of information asymmetry which impacts him, right? And 99 acres, what it does is it reduces that information asymmetry by making all that information which he wants in a way that is easily discoverable, and it facilitates decision making. So just to illustrate my point, what 99 acres does is we have around 10 lakh listings, right? And among that, around 1.6 lakh listings are verified, which means that we would have gone there on the property and clicked the photos ourselves, which means these are completely verified. We know they exist. Right, then there are around, we have 100% of the projects which have been approved by RERA on our site for the customer to view. And these projects have all relevant information in them, and they are kept updated all the time. Then we have the landmark information, which is also verified by us. One new thing that we have started doing is we have collected a lot of locality and project reviews on our website, and these locality reviews, when I say, these are not done by us, right? These are done by the real buyers, real owners. As of now, we have around 1 lakh plus reviews on our site, which makes the information unbiased, and therefore it facilitates the customer to make decisions. We also have 3D floor plans, and there are around 2 lakh listings which have 3D floor plans. A 3D floor plans allows a user, especially the lady of the home, the prospective home buyer, to understand how the home will look like. Where will the sofas be placed? How will the kitchen be looked? So all these information provided in such a way that it is easily discoverable, people can compare, and then they can take a decision. This is how we have been able to leverage the digital platform to reduce the information asymmetry and therefore make the decision process smoother.
Yeah, it's a wonderful platform. I am a consumer itself, so it's a great initiative. In fact, it makes life a whole lot easier. Moving on to Venkatesh. Venkatesh, the question for you is like Kimberly Clark being one of the pioneers of India in its segment. What strategies and tools have you deployed to up level the customer experience? Since India is not an easy market, so we want to hear from you.
Thank you, Sharda. Thank you for the question, and thank you, Nisha, for the introduction. The new normal and the pandemic that has hit us has actually accelerated both the consumers as well as the brands like Huggies, Kotex, their journey towards digital and how they have adopted omni-channel engagement, and various digital channels and properties that we basically own have exploded in the last 1 year or so. We at KC think that omni-channel is not just about being on every channel, but it's about being on the channel which is of preference to the consumer. We want to deliver personalized experiences on the platform of the consumer's choice, and that has basically directed our growth. That has been the directional guide for us to develop our digital capabilities and implement various omni-channel strategies that we have. We have gone to market with various digital new initiatives, existing initiatives, and to that end we have gone to market in India, Brazil, Argentina, Malaysia, Philippines, to name a few. All of these markets are very highly challenging markets in terms of them being very cluttered, in terms of a lot of local players being there, and in terms of it being completely diversified in terms of channels. Say if you go to something like Philippines, you would possibly be much more engaged on Facebook Messenger, whereas in India it's about WhatsApp, or in Vietnam could be about Zalo, or say something of our European markets could be about Telegram or Viber and so on. So that being the case, we are looking at a strategy in which we can reach out to a consumer on their channel of preference. Let me give an example. We have started mom's channel on WhatsApp India, wherein this is about engaging moms during the pregnancy, providing pregnancy support to moms, providing medically vetted tips and advice to mothers who need it the most. And this has given us tremendous response in Indian market. And we have chatbots and consumer care that is being led on WhatsApp in countries like Brazil, Argentina, where the channel of preference, again, to reach out to a consumer care kind of a channel is on WhatsApp. Or if you go to Philippines, as I said, in Facebook Messenger, we have started some chatbots on Facebook Messenger, and also on say very localized platforms like KakaoTalk or Zalo in countries like Korea and that is South Korea and Vietnam. So we have embraced digital wholeheartedly, and we have ensured that we are reaching out to the consumer where they prefer, how they prefer. And this is basically delivered us immense amount of value in the last 1 year or so. And in terms of our market results, we have been doing better than ever. And I would attribute at least a part of it, if not a lot of it, to our embracing the digital channels and the way we have gone about reaching out to the consumers and providing those personalized experiences on their channel of choice. I keep repeating on their channel of choice because omni-channel more or less is right now trying to say I am there everywhere. That's not going to cut the ice, because if you're there everywhere, you're spread too thin, and you're putting your resources and you're putting your investments everywhere, and that ensures that your one single interaction might not be the best quality. So the consumer insight of where the consumer wants to be plays a key role of which channel would I basically choose in the plethora of omni-channel say capabilities that are currently available.
Yes, I completely agree. Customer preference is the way to go. Actually, getting to customers on all channels may get frustrating, and I think this is the change that we are actually witnessing these days, that brands are actually looking for the preferred channels that the consumer would want to be engaged on. So this is really great, and not only are you looking at customer engagement, you're also looking at customer sentiments, and the use case that you mentioned is really great, the mom's one. So I really appreciate that.
Of course,
I'm a mom too, so I can really connect. So thank you so much. So moving on to next question, which is for all the panel members. We want to understand from you all that what are the omni-channel trends that you've seen, especially in pre-COVID and post-COVID era, like we're calling this post-COVID, but hopefully it remains. And the customer experience, we want to know, is it still the driving factor for omni-channel? Because, we want to understand what new technologies are you, exploring to enhance customer journey. And since we are talking CX, I would like to, start with Arindam, as healthcare has been the, most critical industry in the last 1 year. So we are all ears, Arindam.
Hi, good afternoon, and good afternoon to everyone. It's a nice platform to express my experience during the pandemic times because I have been a patient and I have been also the customer service excellence head of this hospital. So I can relate to both the sides. So when the COVID started, it was actually a very serious matter for everyone in the society. And we were also new to this disease. So we were not knowing what is going to happen because in the media, a lot of positives and negative informations was passing out. So we were only on dependent on the medias and also the Western countries' informations and the China's information and all. But ultimately, when we look at when we face the scenario, the doctors, I mean, I'm talking about the clinicians and the nursing teams, they have understood that, this particular type of disease had got different angles of different age groups. For the young is a different, for the aged people, they have turned in a different side. So taking all things into considerations, healthcare is something without touch, without seeing a patient, a doctor cannot diagnose even what has happened with the patient. But during this COVID scenario, a lot of things have changed into a digital platform. Like our hospital was divided into zones where COVID patients were being kept, and we have restricted, as per the government rule, we have to restrict their patient relatives to come into the hospital. Now, to connect with the patients and the relatives along with the doctors, what we have started actually was the virtual communication, and we have made a fixed timing for the doctors with the patient relatives and also the patient with the patient relatives. So actually what happened, they were every day they were connected, but those patients who are in a critical conditions, we didn't allow the patients to talk about with the patient relatives. It was only the doctors who spoke with the patient family members. So that was the first step that we took into the healthcare industry of these virtual communications, because we wanted everyone to be connected about the condition of the patient, because the family members are not allowed to come into the hospital. That was one part, but at the same time, while the doctors were actually communicating with family members, they were also guiding the family members how to protect themselves from not being get infected by the COVID things. So that was the first initial step. Then followed by, we have actually also launched the satellite unit, where those patients who are not so critically ill but can be managed in a separate facility, we also set up that place. And what we have done is basically we have done without the ICU facilities in that. We have put it's actually a hospital with all the facilities of doctors, nurses, F&B, housekeeping, and everything, but it was directly connected with the main hospital, through again the digital platform. Even the doctors who were not, even though sometimes the patients wanted to talk to the doctors, so there was a single point of contact. Doctor's number was given to all the patients who were staying inside the room. They can at any point of time do the WhatsApp chatting with the doctors, even do the video call with the doctors, and they can even explain what they wanted to say. The doctors were always at time to explain the condition of the patient and guide them. So that was another way of connecting in a digital platform. So these were
I
the
really agree.
channels. And not only that, if you look at, we have the Woodlands Hospital, which is basically a 75 years and the most oldest hospital in Kolkata. So here we have actually started the Facebook Live, which the doctors explains to the community that how for all the specialities, it's not particularly for any particular specialty, it's all the specialities, how to deal with the conditions. So this is what, so these consultations, if you have any problem, then you come to the hospital. But there is also a learning and also the awareness to the community that how the individual diseases can be treated or can be prevented or can be dealt with. So this is how the Woodlands Hospital have started during the pandemic situation. And post-pandemic, there are a lot of things that we have done.
Yeah, I truly agree and appreciate. I can take a moment to thank all the healthcare industry, and they've stepped up. And adoption of omni-channel has actually helped us in this pandemic. It will be so true. So moving on to Monish, waiting to hear from you.
Hi, thanks, Shraddha, and thanks. It was lovely hearing what all the other panelists had to say. See, the way I put this is both marketing and services over a period have evolved from an era of what we used to call traditional segmentation to now what we call hyper-personalization and what I call the segment of one. The point is every individual is just that, is an individual. And every individual wants to be acknowledged, understood, and treated that way. That is why it is very important, like Venkatesh spoke earlier, to understand what is the customer's preference. Every customer will have a preference for a channel. And it's important for us, for any organization for that matter, for any B2C organization, to be with the customer when he needs you, where he needs you, and in the form that he needs you. Now, you cannot be all pervasive, and you should not be all pervasive, because that is not really, it's like a shotgun approach. You're all over the place without really being effective. And how do you actually do that? Now, the biggest point is you cannot obviously be everywhere for everyone. And this is where I think we as an organization, a lot of organizations, particularly in the last 2 years, I would say, who started adopting both artificial intelligence and data analytics, have seen that this has really worked to our advantage, because for you to understand what the customer preference is, you first need to know the customer. And for an organization like ours, which has millions of customers with billions and billions of interactions which are happening, it's very difficult if you do not have the right kind of intelligence engines and the right kind of data analytics behind to actually understand who the customer is, or what does the customer want. And when we talk about this, the most important thing here is how do you predict and how do you preempt what a customer's need could be. It's always easy for you to do anything in hindsight, but what is it that you can do to predict a customer? My friends in customer service will agree, the most painful, and in fact everybody would agree, the most painful channel to get in touch with an organization is the IVR. Nobody likes to get in touch with the IVR. An unfortunate part, but the fact is it's a reality that before you get in touch with an agent, you will have to traverse through an IVR. Now, we realize that this, while it is a channel which may not be preferred, but there are ways that you can actually make this channel more intelligent. And this is where we move from a traditional IVR to a contextual IVR. What do I mean by a contextual IVR? A contextual IVR is an IVR which is intelligent enough to understand what is the likelihood of a customer reaching out to me, and what is the chances that he's reaching me out for an X item. If I'm able to predict that and I'm able to offer that upfront, the customer does not have to wait in line for a lot of things. And I'm happy to share that we actually have been very successful in terms of deploying about 4 to 5 contexts already, where our data engines are able to analyze the customer's past behavior and predict really accurately what a customer is calling for. So what is really happening is the customer is the moment he hits the IVR, I know it's Shraddha calling me, I know it's Arindam who's calling me because I know your mobile number. I know that in the last 10 days, this is what has happened with you. And I'm saying with reasonable certainty, probably this time around you're calling me to redeem a reward, or you're calling me to ask for a payment status. My engine is able to identify that and put that up to you upfront. So instead of you going through a 10-layer IVR where I'll say, press 1 for this, 2 for this, 4 for this, and 7 for this, I would say, are you calling me for this? And if it is accurate enough, you punch it and you don't even need to talk to an agent. You wanted to make a payment and I predicted that you wanted to make a payment and I've given that option to you. So I am personalizing it to you to the level where I am able to predict your behavior. And this is what a customer appreciates. And we found our CSAT scores on the IVR jumped 3-folds. So people who obviously did not rate us very high on IVR, they now find that this is a channel where we can actually use it to service themselves. And this is, I think, the biggest thing that we talk about. You can have multiple channels. The point is not about having omni-channel. The point is about having the right channel with the right intelligence that can predict what the customer wants and provide the customer. You may be 60% accurate, you may be 70% accurate. I'm saying even if you are 50% accurate, it's good enough, because the other 50% of the pain you're taking away. The customer knows what you're really getting in touch with him for. And this cannot be done without a huge interaction with the data platforms that we have. So you have to make sure that whatever data you have is current, is updated, is actually giving you and throwing you those insights. And I've given an example of a contextual IVR, which is just a very small thing, but there are so many use cases that you can use to predict and to actually service a customer a lot better. And that has been our learning. The other learning that we've had is, fortunately, or what has happened is, during the lockdown period and the pandemic, because of social constraints, people were forced to move to the digital channel. But what has really happened is that people who were forced migrated, they've realized today that, hey, this is a much better channel than waiting to speak to an agent. So the stickiness of the channel has gone up. So what I would have probably reached in 2023, I've already reached now, just because the customer has started adopting that. And what really that benefits me is, the moment a customer starts adopting a channel, the channel starts to grow, the channel starts to evolve. I'm not too sure, but I hadn't heard of Zoom before the pandemic, or Microsoft Teams. That, the last 12 months we've all survived on Microsoft Teams and Zooms, and my children on a Zoom all the time, right? I hadn't heard of Zoom before that, and forget about the market capitalization there. But that really shows that how technology which has come in is going to take advantage, and it's sticking on. So schools may have opened today, but my son still does his online classes.
You're so right.
Doing online classes, he's doing online classes other than school. So he does his Spanish class in a school today, which he was not doing. He's learning drums on school today, on Zoom today, which I couldn't even imagine. How can somebody learn to play an instrument through Zoom? And I have access today to the best of teachers just because that person is available maybe in Mumbai. The person will not fly down to Delhi for him to teach my son. But on Zoom, he's omnipresent. So omni-channel for me is making sure that you're omnipresent at the time that you need.
You're so right. This is actually, we all can relate to the examples they've quoted, and of course the IVR is something we can look up to. It's a great adoption at this moment. So I believe we are running short of time, but if in 30 seconds, if we can quickly wrap up with rest of our panelists before I conclude. I just want to quickly ask, like, of course it is evident that omni-channel is not a luxury that we should check out, but it's of course the necessity of the hour, it's the need of the hour. And where do you think omni-channel is going from here? I've heard from Monish, we are talking about contextual IVR and adoption in terms of the preference, the channel preference of users. So in 30 seconds, because we are falling short of time, if I can have one or two lines from each of the panelists, it would be great for me to conclude the session. I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Amol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead. Yeah. So as Monish mentioned and everyone is mentioning, digital adoption is something which is really driving the whole omni-channel agenda. And if we look at India in the last 3 years, we have doubled our internet penetration. We have moved from around 35 crores to now 75 crores. Internet users, and because of this large internet users, we also see on our platform that the traffic has gone 3x. And because there is now a lot of this data available with us, we can customize our recommendation, customize the way users use our platform just to surface them that information which is required. Something very similar to contextual IVR. Right, and we use this lot of this data in terms of understanding what content is right and what content is wrong. So there are fake. We are able to use this data in terms of identifying some of the fake listings and remove those fake listings from our platform, making enabling the buyer to use the best of the information. Yeah, so I'll be short so that other people can also chip in.
Sure.
Yeah, for me, it's like, yesterday I was, and though we are looking at for all the things to be in a AI platform, because healthcare is moving in that particular direction. So yesterday we had a discussion with one of the company called Care Expert, who are actually linked with the Reliance and Tata healthcare sectors. What they are doing, what they are offering is what I feel is very good, that we are also looking forward for that, is like everything should have a real-time data for the internal people of the hospital so that they know what's actually happening. At the same time, we should also that the services that we are looking at giving it through digital platforms like printing, hoardings, and all these things. These will go on a real-time thing to the patient on the latest updates, latest technologies, latest informations to the community, the entire patient or the family members, so that they are also being aware. This is something a lot of the Western countries people, they are aware of everything because it is all being available to them by the government. Now here also we found that this is a very particular initiative that this company is giving, and we think we will be going forward to it and having all the things unexplored, but the things are there. It will be absolutely crystal clear to the people what they are wanting, because healthcare is something which is everybody is looking at because of this, not because of the pandemic, but because of the regular lifestyle maintaining to everything. So I think the Omni channel and the digital platform and the AI, everything will club together. We'll have a great changes in the coming days. That's what I feel.
Of course, we heard it from Rishikesh also earlier, like how government is also adopting the same. Moving to Venkatesh quickly.
I see a lot of challenges, both for the brands as well as for consumers. Consumers who are of the elderly, who possibly are not able to adopt to digital, would be forced to adopt to digital channels, if not now, maybe sometime in the near future, as brands accelerate their own adoption. And also challenges for the brand side in terms of scaling up on these multiple channels that we have and driving that hyper personalization at scale. I mean, looking at something like a global scale like I do, I have from Korea to Argentina and Canada to Australia to look at. So how do I drive scale of that range and yet drive personalization, local languages, artificial intelligence, chatbot, AI, ML data? With all of these tools and technologies that we are throwing in, more are the challenges, more are the solutions. So both go hand in hand. That's how I see it. It's a mixed bag.
Yeah, good perspective that we have from you. So some ending notes with Monish so that I can conclude the session.
So thanks again. And I think while I propagated the digital channel earlier, let me take a 180-degree turn now altogether. Sir, saying that businesses have to realize there is no broad brush strategy. I think the biggest mistakes that businesses make is putting in a digital solution and thinking that it's a panacea. Everything is going to get solved by digital. It will not. And business should realize people are to handle emotions. And that is what they are good at. Machines and digital is to give information and to do action. I think the way, if we are able to evolve a mechanism which clearly distinguishes where a digital channel hands off to a human element, that is where we would have reached success. A customer, an insurance customer, when he is calling you to ask for a claim, he doesn't need to know what a claim form is. That person needs a comfort. That person needs somebody at the end of the line to give him or her a comfort, saying, hey, I am there for you. You trusted me with your premium, I am there for you. Similarly, in banking, if a customer is calling you for a transaction that has got through, you need to be there for the customer emotionally to tell the customer, hey, hold on, nothing is going to go wrong, I am there for you. So make sure that we are able to identify what should go digital and what should definitely not go digital. I think the second part is more important than the first one. It is very easy for us to start pushing digital down everybody's throat. It will not work because it is not what it is meant for.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. In fact, to conclude this session and, the wonderful insight that I have from all the esteemed panelists, first of all, thank you so much. All I can say towards the end is, of course, we are looking towards a mixed, a blend of digital and traditional channels, not only to increase the customer experience, maximize our CX, but also to check out the emotional quotient and other patterns that we have to. So it's a mix. It has to be a blend of both. So with that note, I would like to conclude the session and thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I had a great time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks to
Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Thapa, and thank you to all the great panelists we have today. I'd like to move on to the next session. I'd like to welcome our next partner, Freshworks, to this session. Mr. Sandeep John will be giving us his keynote presentation on the new CX mandate customer services strategy for 2021. Sandeep currently heads field marketing for India and Southeast Asia at Freshworks. Prior to this, he led campaign initiatives across the UK, Middle East, and Africa, and also has been instrumental in setting up the sales development function at Freshworks. So, Mr. John, over to you. You have the next 15 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Nisha. Thanks for that, and hope all of you can hear me. So we've also got the chat window, so if any of you would like to ask questions during the course of this, the next 15 minutes, feel free to drop in on the chat as well. I've got a few questions, poll questions as well. So I know there's quite a few of you attending right now. So I'd love for you to participate. And I'm going to make it very easy for you in terms of the questions. So you'll have options of A, B, C, and D. So please do that as well. So just give me 1 second while I quickly share my screen, because I've got a small deck to share with all of you. I'm hoping all of you can see my deck now as I present.
Yes, sir. It's up on screen.
Thanks, Nisha. Great. So why don't we get started? So I think just at the back of all of this, and I also had the opportunity to catch the previous session as well. I think a lot of talk around how omni-channel and how digitization has really taken the forefront of what's happened in the world today. And literally, I've come across a few roundtable discussions where we're talking to many people and many CIOs and CTOs of organizations. What they've told us is literally saying that you've had like almost 100 years of experience in those roundtable sessions, but nobody could predict really what happened in 2020. And literally, it has taken a pandemic to get most companies to accelerate their whole digital transformation journey. Right. So what do we do at Freshworks? So I think what I'm going to do to the course of this is, and of course, everyone who's attending this session today will get a copy of this report that I'm talking about. It's something called the new CX mandate report. We did it across the globe. And so what I'm going to do is, through the course of this next 15 minutes, is walk you through some of the very interesting insights. Some of this might be quite obvious to you, but some of it could be quite interesting to see. And really, I think the big takeaways from this particular presentation is to understand what you as an organization can do. How can you improve your CX, given that we know everything that's happened in 2020? Essentially, that's kind of the flow that you're going to see today. Right. So before I begin, so my name is Sandeep, and like Nisha introduced, I take care of field marketing for the India and Southeast Asia markets right now at Freshworks. Let's get into it. For those who don't know who Freshworks is, so we're a company that was founded in 2010. We're a company that's accelerated growth over the last few years, more than 3,500 odd employees spread across the world today. Most of us are kind of working in a hybrid atmosphere, and as you would guess right now, I'm sitting right now in my office because I had the opportunity of the offices opened up for people to come in and walk in as well. So we've got offices all across the globe and several customers across the globe as well. Now, a bit about who we are and what do we do as an organization. So essentially, we're in the business of customer engagement. So we've got a suite of products that help in better customer engagement. We also look at our product suite also has products that help with acquiring customers and keeping customers for life. We are the only company, or at least one of our products called Freshdesk, is named as a visionary in Gartner's quadrant as well. So do look us up. If you'd like to know a little bit more about what Freshworks does as an organization, do go to freshworks.com and have a look as well. So whilst we are a global company, we are a company that started out of Chennai, and I'm sitting in our Chennai office here in India. We have kind of branched off, and we've got offices, as I mentioned, all across the globe. And I just quickly wanted to highlight some of our customers who we work for in India as well on this particular slide. Great. So let me talk about what I'm going to try and cover during the course of this session. First of all, I'd like to let's look at what the state of customer service was in 2020. And here's where I'm going to have a little bit of interaction from all of you as well. The second bit is we're going to look at a little bit of regional insights. So we're going to try to understand what does all of this mean as far as the APAC market is concerned. So when I say APAC here, I mean literally covering India, Southeast Asia, and the ANZ regions as well. Also, what are the big takeaways for all of us before we go? And of course, I'll also open up for Q&A, but then we don't need to wait for the Q&A session right at the end. Feel free to drop in your questions through the chat window through the course of this session, and I'll be happy to take them right at the end. Now, to begin, I think we're going to start off with a quick poll question. This one's for all of you, and I think to make life easier, I know you have the access to the chat window, so feel free to drop in your options, either A, B, C, or D. So the question is, which of the following was true regarding the state of customer service in 2020? So if you're a CX leader or you're part of a CX team, irrespective of which side of the organization you work in, what did you see? So option A is customer expectations have increased. Option B is customer service budgets have increased significantly. Option 3 is customer service leaders have really embraced this whole work from home culture, or is it all the four? So I'd like to see if I can see some of the chat options. So if you are on the chat window, feel free to drop. I think there are a few answers coming in. So somebody said customer expectations have increased. So all there are four options. Feel free to choose which option. If you'd like, you can just drop in either A, B, C, or D. I can see a few folks selecting D as an option. Great, I'll just keep this up for a couple of seconds more because I'd like to comment. Okay, that's wonderful. I think a lot of people are choosing D, which is interesting. Okay, I think I'll move on from here on in. I think the good thing to note about this is the fact that it is very much true. I think all these three options that we put out here, the four options in fact, but the three key points being customer expectations have increased, customer service budgets have also increased significantly because of what we've seen in the pandemic. And number 3 is customer service leaders have embraced work from home. Now, what I'm going to bring out is what does this actual report tell us though? So the report tells us this. Now, it says very clearly, as all of you have mentioned, customer expectations have increased. Now, there's a very interesting point that's going on here. So the fact that most people have now moved into this whole digital first world, the expectations of getting quicker responses, irrespective of the kind of channel that you are reaching out to, let's say a company, customer expectations have naturally gone up. There's also a very interesting fact around the customer expectations increased. For example, certain industries, for example, if you're in the finance sector, if you are, let's say, a fintech organization as well, and you're dealing with payment transactions, literally, customers almost have no sense of, in a sense that they'd like responses to come as quickly as possible. So there is some level of differentiation between the industry itself in terms of the expectations, but it is pretty high. The second bit is around 67% talk about how budgets have increased as well. So there has very clearly been an increase in budget because most customer service leaders have understood the need to invest in some form of technology or the other to really help them in this process. And I'll talk a little bit about what kinds of technology that people are actually investing in a little bit later on. The third bit is also CX leaders have really understood that they need to sort of embrace, and all of us are seeing it right now, right? Either people, and I saw the previous session as well, few of you were working from your homes. Most of you probably attending today are either working from your home or working in an office and have this kind of either complete remote environment or some kind of a hybrid environment, again, depending on the kind of industry that maybe requires that level of face time. For example, manufacturing, there have been enough folks actually working in the plant. Otherwise, working remotely in a manufacturing setup is going to be extremely difficult. But that being said, it's very clear that almost 68% of customer service leaders feel the need to create some kind of remote or even hybrid environment. Now let's move to the next bit. So the interesting point that I want to call out here, and I just want you to have sort of draw your eyes towards the first two things here, right? So whilst customer expectations were on the high, and you can see around 70% in the overall scheme of things, customer empathy was also high. Now, this is, if you think about it, and customer churn was expected. I think this is also relevant to certain kinds of industries. For example, industries like travel and tourism took a big hit because travel did not happen as much. So it is important to look at that as well. So customer expectations were on the high. Customer empathy was also on the high. It's borderline contradictory because if you think about it, whilst customers had extremely high expectations, their empathy levels to some extent were also high. So people understood that folks were working from home. But like I mentioned earlier, if you are dealing with the finance sector and dealing with things like money, you weren't really patient about the kind of responses that you were getting, right? The other thing to also look at is as certain things in expectations change. So I'm also drawing a comparison in terms of globally what that looks like. So fairly similar. in terms of most of the geos of what they're looking at in terms of customer expectations. Now, one of the other bits I want to quickly call out is in terms of what the support volumes look like, right? So the traditional means of people reaching out phone, and there was also conversation in the previous segment about IVR and how that's going to continue to exist. There was a greater transcendence of channels like live chat, messaging being one of the key drivers for people, because now most people, you had this entire set of a generation of folk who are now using their mobile apps to try and order groceries, who typically would walk into stores. Like, for example, my mother, who's like a fairly older person, started using the app to download a bunch of things as well. So this is almost a new sense of users into the system, and they suddenly started becoming a lot more comfortable with live chat, with messaging and things like that. So very clearly, that saw a high growth rate as well. But what are the bigger challenges that faced, right? So very clearly, number one was adapting to a change in the channel mix. From traditional people receiving a lot of calls on the phone, a lot of companies realized that the customers themselves were trying to shift their channel. So the conversation earlier also was about how omnichannel, whilst omnichannel is important, it is important for you to know where your customers are to build that whole customer journey out as well. So one is the adapting nature of the channels as well. Two is also to make process changes within the technology platforms to wherever one can enable. And I think the three bigger point here is the fact is having some kind of strong knowledge management system as well. At the end of the day, a lot of the times you want customers to be able to reach out and solve problems on their own through where you're trying to deflect queries as much as you possibly can to create FAQs and things like that on your system as well. So three big areas that potentially helped folks. And I mentioned this earlier as well, customer service budget increase. In fact, in the APAC region overall, there was a significant, almost 11% increase as compared to what the globe was also doing. There was a decrease in staffing, and this is very much in effect of what initially, and this is also, just mind you, this was taken at what happened in 2020, whilst a lot of companies have resumed hiring post the latter half of the year. Initially, it was a bit of difficult, so there was a lot of challenges with regards to staffing. So I think customer service leaders did see a decrease in staffing during the early parts of the year. Great. So why don't I cover a little bit about the tools as well. I did mention earlier on that there were quite a few investments around tools and customer service as the budgets increased for customer service leaders. What happened there? So a few options here. Again, one other poll question. I'd like to see what kind of responses you have. Again, feel free to drop your responses on the chat. So what are the critical tools that really helped you during this crisis? Option A being live chat and messaging. Option B being workforce management, collaboration tools, self-service portal, or internal knowledge management system. I have my personal favorite, but I'd like to hear from you. I'm going to go back to the chat window and quickly see how many folks have got as well. So feel free. I can see a few folks have said live chat and messaging as being one of the options. So I'd like to know from all of you, feel free to drop your responses on the chat. Which critical tools have helped you most during this crisis? Is it live chat and messaging? Is it workforce management, collaboration tools, self-service portal, or internal knowledge management system? Keep this up for a couple of seconds. So I think few folk have actually come back and said it's predominantly around the live chat and messaging. For me, whilst I think live chat and messaging has almost been a day-to-day for me in my regular work, even pre-pandemic days, I think one of the big lifesavers for me has been literally the use of collaboration tools, the ability to be able to reach out to your internal departments. For example, if I have a problem with my laptop, how do I get in touch with my IT team to solve for that? So we have an internal tool called Fresh Service that essentially helps with that. But things like that have really sort of helped, made my life as an employee, especially working a lot from home, that's really helped me. But what is the actual, the results of the poll? So coincidentally, a good part of it, so the top 5 critical tools, and that's what we wanted to put up on the board as well. Live chat and messaging being key, workforce management, of course, being very important, collaboration tools, self-service portals, and internal knowledge management systems. In fact, very clearly, 44% of customer service leaders worldwide said that live chat and messaging literally were critical for them to maintain service levels. So we already know that customer expectations were on the high, but really a lot of investment went around live chat, went around across the web, mobile messaging, making sure there was this consistent experience across not just that channel, but all other channels as well. So greater investments happened in that line. Great. I know we're a bit short on time in general, but I'll just try to quickly cover a couple of points as well before I close. I think one of the big things, and by the way, it just happened that 72% seem to be the common across the three things I'm going to talk about right now. Customer service leaders really understood that investing in remote tech, any tech that can help employees work better remotely, was really the future. It was really about the way to go forward, even 2021 onwards, literally, right? So one, of course, being the fact that investing in tech that can help with self-service. Self-service, as I mentioned earlier on, is nothing but helping customers resolve queries on their own, whether it's investing in things like bots, for example, that can help solve for that, number one. Two is investing in customer service platforms, be it Freshworks or any other company as well, that can really help them drive greater engagement. And three, of course, looking at things like AI and chatbots and automations within their tool as well, essentially making life easier for their agents and thereby, of course, making life easier for customers on the other end as well. Cool. So the last bit, I think, from the three key takeaways that I would mention in this is, of course, 2021 is going to be literally about looking at the new work from home norm. Like literally, is this going to be a completely remote? A lot of companies, a lot of tech companies have also decided to go completely remote, or is it going to be some kind of a hybrid world, given whatever we know of the world today? Two, there is going to be a significant rise in support requests as we progress as well. As I mentioned, now there is a newer generation of folks starting to use mobile apps, starting to interact via chat and whatnot. So the support requests are going to increase. In fact, things like telephone calling, for example, will probably be restricted to almost specialized services. For example, IVR will take care of the basic requests, and then the agent on the other end will try to solve for complex queries. Things like chat, for example, will take a lot more precedence. And I think the third part, and I think nothing much that doesn't cover a bit of the survey as well, whilst everyone is going through working from home and whatnot, I think one of the big things companies should look at is agents are also generally stressed, overworked in terms of being able to handle multiple queries at the same time. It's important for organizations to invest in some kind of programs to look after their people. Essentially, if you take care of your agents, they're going to take care of your customers. So investing in the right kind of tech and investing in your people as well to ensure that they have the right kind of physical and mental well-being that can truly help them. All right.
Sandeep, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, Nisha, I'm on point. Don't worry. Yep.
All right. So we're going to
bang on. Yeah.
to the end, in the interest of time, because we've overrun, if that's
okay
with you.
So we're done. I'll just quickly summarize just one line. So I think thanks, Nisha, for that. I think all I wanted to say at the end of the day. So by the way, so if anyone would like a copy of the CX mandate report, all of you who are attending will get a copy of that report as well. Do we have time for Q&A? And I think with that, I'd like to thank anyone. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, feel free to email me or connect with me on LinkedIn. But Nisha, do we have time for Q&A, or should we just take that offline?
We'll definitely address it at the end of the session, Sandeep, if that's okay. And, if we don't, then we can always write back and we have questions, trails here. So, like Sandeep said, we'd be happy to share your report and read it as well and send it to the audience. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. All
right. Thanks. We'd like to now move to the, the final keynote for today from our next partner, which is Zendesk. Ms. Neha Mandrulkar will be taking us through CX Trends 2021. Sorry, Neha, to have kept you waiting there. But Neha handles enterprise segment for Zendesk. In the West, she works with organizations to help them provide a delightful and easy customer experience. She has more than 10 years of corporate sales experience working in various technology organizations like Oracle, LinkedIn, and Polaris. So Neha, over to you. You have 15 minutes, ma'am.
Sure. Thank you so much, Nisha. It's been a pleasure being here, and it has been an insightful session till now, so can't wait to get started. Thank you so much, guys. Let me share my presentation.
Yeah, we see it. You can move it to the presentation mode.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, all
right. Hello, everyone. So again, to reiterate, this is Neha Mandrulkar. I'm I'm talking to you all from Zendesk, and I'm here to speak to you about the customer experience trends for 2021. Before we begin, I will just like to set a context as to why we drew these trends and what is it that we do with customer experience trends and how is it that we can practically implement them in our day-to-day life, especially as customer service organizations. For all of us, 2020 has been an very different ride. I don't think any of our previous generations have seen a world which saw pandemic to such a large extent, where we were under lockdown for more than a year. It was, in fact, a never seen before time. It was a wild ride for everyone. Everyone was stuck at home. So customers flocked online, and not just customers who flocked online. It's also our support agents were working remotely, and companies scrambled. So there was a lot of mayhem. There were a lot of cancellations. There was a lot of market volatility. There was uncertainty, and companies required to be flexible more than ever. And that's the reason why your company's success also depended on a great customer service, because your customers were online. They wanted a flexi environment. They wanted to be able to order everything online from the comfort of their home. And that's how your company's success also depended on a great customer service that you delivered. More than ever, I would like to say. As far as the studies that we drew, we realized that 75% of customers thought that CX was important when making a purchase. So while whether you're buying a piece of garment or you're buying a pair of goggles or even buying a packet of grocery, 75% of the customers thought that CX was important when making a purchase. And believe me, about 50% of them thought that they would leave your organization if they had a bad customer experience. Now, this is a tricky figure, so as to say. 50% is what we see in India, but worldwide, more than 80% of the customers were ready to leave a brand if they had a bad customer experience. However, I don't think this is a need to fret for any of our organizations or customer serving organizations. It has been a time which was challenging, but we are therefore here to tell you what is it that we could learn from last year, what is it that we could adapt from last year's realities, how is it that we could change the way customers can be served while they are at home. Every year, and now 3 years in running, Zendesk has been drawing a report, a survey, by studying 90,000 customers across 175 countries worldwide. And we draw trends which basically help our organizations serve their customers better. This year, we've been able to draw 5 trends that have shown us how the world changed in the pandemic era. Let us jump straight into them. The first one was the spotlight on CX. So more than ever, customers thought that customer experience was important, and Indian firms were also more focused on customer experience. So if you see, the survey says that 90% of the Indian companies thought that CX is more important than it was a year ago, and about 56% of the Indian customers felt the same. So it's not just the organizations that are selling goods to you or experiences to you, it's also the consumers that felt the same. On the bright side, Indian customers are also more forgiving. So if you see, while 80% will switch to a competitor after more than one bad experience, be it LATAM countries like Brazil or developed countries like the United States, UK, Australia. So also in India, we see that customers are forgiven easily, while they are not forgiven easily by the Western world. So 80% will switch to a competitor, whereas in India, the percentage is slightly better. So sorry, to correct what I said, worldwide, the figure is much lower. In India, 80% of the customers are more forgiving than worldwide. It's also a more conversational world today. About a year back, whenever you wanted to meet someone, you would meet them over a cup of coffee, or you would meet them over a drink. Even when you wanted to shop, you would go to a brick and mortar store. Today, of course, you can't do that. The pandemic has taught us how to shop and behave differently. And that's how we saw a rise in the digital world. We saw a rise in messaging. We saw that 93% of the Indian customers used at least one new channel support in 2020. I think Sandeep mentioned in his earlier session that his parents had started using apps that they didn't use earlier. I think that applied to my parents too. The earlier generation definitely became more tech savvy in this new world. We also see that 61% tried messaging as a support channel for the first ever time. So that was never seen before. They tried messaging for the first time, and it worked wonders for the customers. As far as messaging is concerned, India definitely led the global shift towards messaging. So if you see the figures, India is right at the end, this red dot, where we see that 60% was the shift that we saw in messaging in a country like India. And before we move to the next trend, basically what I wanted to again reiterate was, while the world changed, we were still conversing with our customers. We just did it in a different setup. And that brings me to the third trend, which was emphasis on agility. Now, a couple of years back, when we spoke of agility, when we spoke of transformations, the digital transformations or conversations around digital transformations took maybe organizations took a year or two, or even more large organizations took to transform themselves digitally. However, in the pandemic, you were forced overnight to work remotely. Your agents were forced to work remotely, and so were your customers. So you had to drive the transformations faster, and that's why organizations had to be more agile. Because we wanted to drive agility, we also saw that there were many communication channels that opened up: phone, email, chat, social media, and that's how most of the organizations spoke to their customers through various channels. If you look at this graph, you will see the countries in the one in orange means deep orange, which means they used one channel; in yellow, which means they used two channels; and the faint orange, which means they used 3 or more channels. So India is pretty much again, it used more than 2 channels for sure. It also saw a rise in all these messaging apps and digital innovations. In fact, we saw in India, 69% of Indian agents used 2 or more channels. However, while new channels were engaged, while you provided your customers with phone, email, social media integrations, did we really make sense of those conversations is a question. Unfortunately, the answer was that Indian agents had limited access to relevant customer data, which means even if organizations used more than 2 channels, they weren't able to make sense of the data. All of us must have had those experiences when you call up a call center and the customers have no idea, the support agents have no idea as to what has happened in the background. They have no idea about your purchase history. They've no idea about the conversations you've had in the past, and they ask you to go on hold for innumerable minutes. Unfortunately, that is the experience that we don't want to give our customers. So while we see a positive trend that organizations are giving more channels to converse, we also see that they are not able to make sense of it, and that's how you should try and change the way you serve customers so that you have access to their data. This also brings me to the second last trend, which is the future of work is now. I think Sandeep again had mentioned in his session, and a lot of speakers also did. There's been a lot of talk in the last 1 year on hybrid work environments. So it's not just your customers which are working from home; it's your agents who are working remotely. What it also does is it saves you your infrastructure cost. So you can hire more support agents. You can serve your customers better because you have more support agents, and you can also make them happy because you are able to answer the queries as fast as possible. So I would say go
I think we lost Neha there. Let's just give her a second.
But do you have any way of...
We're just waiting for Neha to connect back. Apologies for that. Okay, unfortunately, she's having a tough time connecting again. So I'd like to take the liberty to move to the next session at the moment. Okay, Neha is back. She's just messaged. Sorry, Neha. I think you were on your last slide. You're on mute.
Yeah, I was on my second last slide. Sorry, guys. I could hear you, Nisha. I don't know why is it that you couldn't. Let me share my presentation right away.
Not a problem.
How much time do we have?
You have another 2 minutes max.
Okay, just a second.
Thank you. I think it's just been a general bad bandwidth day today across the.
All right. Could you see my screen? Right.
It's coming up. Yeah, we can.
All right. I think this is the last slide, the second last slide that I was talking about. As to how our work environments have changed, we're looking at hybrid work environments. I was giving an example of an Australian wireless and communication services company called Progility, and how we helped customers across industries like healthcare, energy, and many other industries, along with the internal employees, to get up and running on the services within a couple of days using Zendesk platform. So despite it being a logistical nightmare, within a couple of days, Progility was able to provide customers and the internal employees the platform and the experience that we would have seen even in a non-pandemic era. And that brings me to the last point, which is the digital tipping point. I will just like to take a step back and explain where the word digital really comes from. So while we've been talking about being digital from ages, if you see the history of the word digital comes from the word digits. Digits meaning at your fingertips, which means you want information at your fingertips. Your customers are not ready to wait for any transformational changes. While we spoke about those changes over a couple of years earlier, they wanted those changes and that agility within days and maybe even hours when the pandemic hit us. A great example of this digital tipping point was for a shipping company for us in France. It goes by the name Valeria. They operate shipping. They operate ships within Spain and along the Strait of Gibraltar. They set up their chat and messaging services just within 2 days, and the information about their boarding passes or even queries that the travelers had was easily shared via those messaging platforms, and that's how easy it was. It just took 2 days for a huge shipping organization such as them to provide the digital experience that our customers look for in these times. So in a nutshell, while 2020 has been an amusing year, an interesting year, a difficult year to many of us, it also taught, while it opened a lot of cracks, I think it also gave an opportunity for organizations to rise up to the occasion and serve their customers differently. And that's how these trends showcase that even during trying times, you can actually serve your customers. With that, I'd like to call it a wrap, and would also like to suggest that just in case you want to deep dive as to what those trends are, what those customer experience trends are, what are some of the interesting implementations that we've done worldwide, and that too in a couple of days, please have a look at the Zendesk customer experience trends report at zendesk.com/customer experience trends, and that's a very interactive report. I'm sure you all will enjoy having a look. And that brings me to the end of my session. Sorry for that glitch in between. Thank you, Nisha, for having me over. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It's been a very eye-opening trend report that you've shared and facts that you've shared. And so is the report, free to download and anybody can download it? Our audience can?
Yes. So Zendesk.com/CX trends is where they'll be able to get a copy of their report.
Great. We'd love to share your report as well as John's report, to the audience. Thank you so much for your time, Neha.
Thank you, Nisha. Thanks. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. So we'd like to move on now to our final segment for today's session. I know we're running short of time. Sincere apologies for that. And thank you so much for your patience, everyone. Our final panel discussion today is on messaging and the future of CX. So Mr. Yashas Prasad will be hosting this segment, joined by his guests, Mr. Mohit Rathi, Mr. Hussain Kesuri, Mr. Somil Mehta, and Ms. Vashima Goel. A customary round of introductions before we begin. Our host, Yashas, leads the commercial business for India and SAARC at Zendesk. He's passionate about driving business growth and helping customers succeed. His guest, Mr. Mohit Rathi, heads the acquisitions and marketing for Porter. During his 5.5 years with Porter, Mr. Rathi has played a pivotal role in making Porter a prominent intra-city player. I would request everybody to keep their lines on mute to minimize any interruptions. Next, we have Mr. Hussain Kesuri. Our next panel guest is the Chief Category Officer at Pepperfry, responsible for the complete category and merchandising operations. During his 8 years at Pepperfry, he has been instrumental in building categories, including the launch of the Omni-channel business, franchisee model, and alliances portfolio at Pepperfry. Mr. Somil Mehta joins us from the Kraft Heinz Company as the country manager for India and Southeast Asia. Having worked with many iconic brands globally and locally like PepsiCo, Samsung, Pidilite, Crumpton, Somel has experience in over two-thirds of the consumer product categories in the world. And our final guest at today's panel discussion is Ms. Vashma Goel, where she serves as Amazon's India head, perfect order experience. Her role entails ensuring that products sold in Amazon India are perfect quality, thereby giving a perfect experience to customers. So we have a great lineup here today. So I'd like to welcome Yashas to kick off the panel discussion. So you have the stage for the next 30 minutes. Thank you. Mr. Prasad, are you online?
I'm so sorry. I think we are in a phase of life where unmute me or probably I'm on mute has become the new normal of how we speak. However, my sincere apologies on that. And just kickstarting the panel discussion, guys. First of all, thank you so much for sparing time, for taking out time and being a part of this exciting panel discussion. And trust me, we have super rich experienced people on this panel discussion, and thank you so much to our esteemed panelists as well. Right, unfortunately, Mr. Hussain could not be a part of this panel discussion due to an emergency, but I'm happy to have this conversation with the rest of the team. Right, so we did have the CX Trends report, okay, that Neha was referring to, and in fact, super insightful. And the topic for this panel discussion today is around messaging and the future of CX. And definitely needless to say, right? Okay, how important is messaging? How important is the future of CX? Because today all of us are living in a world where we used to speak about AD and BC till now, but now we only speak about pre-COVID and post-COVID, right? So it's a new normal of the way we speak and we interact with our fellow colleagues and friends and family, right? So with that context in mind, I would want to probably have the first question to Mr. Somel. Hey, Somel, how are you? Somel, you're on mute.
Hi. So I was just testing my so I'm on mute. Okay, fine. I think now I'm audible properly. Yeah.
No worries.
Right.
So, Somel,
Yeah.
one question that I had for you, right, is as more and more customers rely on digital experiences today, their expectations are completely raising every single
Right.
day. And
Okay.
businesses aren't getting a pandemic pass any longer,
Mm.
unfortunately. So you have to keep up and go ahead, right? So what have you done to ease the burden on your agents, or probably how do you help your customers to get support easier and faster? Have you incorporated any empathy training or digital initiatives into your customer experience?
Okay, so see, a large chunk of my career has been in FMCG and FMCD industry. It's purely consumer product industry, and consumer product industry, unfortunately, pre-pandemic had especially FMCG and something which I have worked really extensively is packaged food and beverages. This product categories had pretty low salience on e-commerce as a channel first of all. Well, that salience has grown exponentially for consumer products overall, but for FMCG, it still remains lower compared to other categories like say consumer durables, mobile phones, accessories, furniture, and entire gamut of services. Services have, I mean, pretty much now, for all we know, has moved completely on having digital interface and digital experiences, and that's where every service industry or service provider is trying to enhance the ease of operations and experience to the consumer. So that's one of the dichotomy, or that's one of the, I would say, disparity where our product industry that I am a part of also goes through. However, so what is very critical is that in physical product, when you have to deliver a physical product right to the end consumer, now it can be through any channel, it can be through a next door retail store or a modern trade store like a Big Bazaar, or maybe through an e-commerce channel. The challenge is that physical delivery, and from the factory till the end of the consumer, and there are multiple intermediaries in between. The number of intermediaries can vary depending on channel to channel, and so our effort in terms of enhancing the digital experience to the customer is not limited only to the end consumer. We have to actually enhance the experience for every channel intermediary. You can call them distributors, channel partners, agents, whatever you call, or retailers, but we have to actually encompass all of these channel partners in end-to-end automation and help them enhance their experiences with every transaction that they do with us. So what is essentially consumer industry, as a part of the consumer industry, we have been doing since ages, and we are evolving on that front pretty rapidly with or even without pandemic, is we are easing the burden on channel partners by doing end-to-end automation. That is, we automate the entire selling ecosystem so that every piece, every unit sold in the country anywhere is captured automatically on a real-time basis, that add back in your system as a liquidation of an inventory, and then it keeps on building on your product forecast on a real-time basis to the factories. Any anomaly over like a 2-3 day or a week can get captured easily because of this kind of an end-to-end automation. And rather than waiting for the full month numbers to roll in, you can actually look at daily or a weekly tweak to your forecast, and then your factories and everyone can plan it accordingly. Even once automated, our customers also get replenishment of the product automatically as per the preset frequency. This also helps customers manage optimum stock levels, because freshness of the assortment is super critical for packaged F&B. In terms of empathy specific to this entire automation effort, this entire digitization effort is actually, the base of that is empathy, because just imagine you are transacting on a physical basis crores of units of products every month. It runs into crores and billions of transactions that happens every month, and your entire ecosystem has to be on their toe managing the transaction. It's a hugely stressed environment. Now, the more you automate most of the processes, rather than ad hocism, you actually create a huge pile of data that gives you meaningful analysis, meaningful understanding. And firstly, your discussion at every value point is basis that data, first of all, and not ad hocism. When you discuss on ad hocism, there is always a stress. When you discuss on data, stress is not there. That's one part of the empathy. And the other part of the empathy is that you enable everyone involved in the value chain to improve their productivity with the automation, and their stress levels also goes down because of this entire automation. Since FMCG is more transactional in nature versus other categories like durables, etc., it is critical that our CX initiative, as I said, encompass this entire ecosystem of value, everyone in the value chain, to reduce their stress in terms of right availability of the right assortment at the right time, ease of the entire selling process till the last mile, till the last consumer, develop good amount of analytics in between through every sales transactions, and even automate other aspects, commercial aspects, like say maybe claim settlement. I think this is how the end-to-end, I would say the entire value chain automation is something which consumer goods industry, as I'm part of consumer goods industry, we are working on, we are enhancing that, and that's how we are supporting our entire ecosystem. And that's the basis of that entire thing is empathy, actually.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Samuel. I can definitely relate to whatever you said, right? And echo your sentiments, especially around empathy, because we at Zendesk, the foundation for everything is empathy. And in fact, COVID has taught every single organization, right? Okay, to one lesson, that is go digital, right? Because we don't know how the future is looking like, what's going to happen tomorrow. And it is important for every single organization to go digital so that there is a seamless engagement that you can have with your customers, right? And on the same lines, right, I also remember interacting with one of the leading FMCG brands in India, okay, who leverage Zendesk. And one of the key things that they have also developed is how effectively they can have a seamless conversation with their customers, okay, via WhatsApp as a channel. Right. So messaging is something that is definitely extending, and which is at par with any other platform, any other channel, I can say. But your thoughts were extremely insightful. Thank you so much. Right. Moving on. Mohit, I have a quick question to you. Okay. And especially you are one of the leaders with respect to the logistics industry, right? Okay. And especially pandemic has taught a lot of lessons to each one of us. So late last year, we actually talked about a lot of high-performing companies and CX champions. And the champions see CX as a most strategic investment, right? Because you're a leader in CX, have you noticed your customer base growing? And if so, how have you recognized the return on investment of a good customer experience strategy? And what is the most impactful investment, according to you?
Right. Thanks, Jesus. Good to be here. Have been listening in all the insightful conversations. and have been learning a lot. So thanks, Nitin, for inviting me here. Yes, so as you rightly said, I think we as a company have always been very obsessed with the customer experience piece of it, and ours is a two-sided platform. So we have on the one side partners who accept the trips, and on the other side who are SME customers or people like you and me who are booking trucks to, let's say, move their house or move the goods in general, right? So we have these, I mean, both the personas on our platform, and when the pandemic hit us, I think it was a very difficult time. And then I mean, at that time we thought that probably will degrow this year, but I think after that we saw a V-shaped kind of a recovery. We were surprised by the recovery that we had, and to be honest, I think we will grow in triple digits this year as well as compared to the last year. So, and I think a lot of it has happened because of our obsession with the the customer experience part of it. As in, so I can give you a couple of examples as well from internally. So we started something called as we have always been a little customer focused, but we started some sort of an initiative inside called a think tank initiative, wherein people from various teams came in together and we started closely listening to the customers, what they're trying to say, what is the need of the hour, etc. So let's say, I mean, you would remember sometime in April and May, a lot of labor migration was happening. You would remember that all the TV news channels, etc., were broadcasting that, and a lot of labor migration is happening. And we realized that for a lot of our customers, this would be a challenge because there would be no labor and loading, unloading would become a challenge there. So we started a new help category on our platform called helper category, wherein the driver or in our case, our partner will help you with that. Similarly, we also realized that the ticket size has gone down because nobody really had a lot of cash at that time. So people were just buying really small quantities basically. So a lot of movement had started happening via two-wheelers, etc. So we launched another category which is two-wheeler, and all of these things, and we did few of the other things on by really segmenting our customers and being able to come up with very sharp focused offerings for them. So it's the result of all of that that we have been able to, as I said, grow by a triple digits this year. If you will ask me that what has been our most impactful investment, it would probably sound a little cliched when I say this, but one of our most prominent investment honestly has been just going back to the basics and just listening our customers really better. I think sometimes when you're growing very fast, you sometimes tend not to listen to them, but when something like this happens, then you don't really have a lot of option but to start really listening and try and find other avenues of growth. And once you do that, you realize that there are actually a lot of insights which are available. So I think probably the most impactful investment for us has been just listening probably more closely to our customers.
Absolutely, I completely relate to you. Relate with you, Mohit. In fact, listening to your customers, right? In fact, one key observation that I've seen, right, is previously, okay, the way in which your customers would probably reach out to you is probably through a telephone or through an email, right? But today, with the number of channels that are increasing, right? Okay, they want you to be there at every single point where they are there. Right, maybe a social media, maybe a telephonic conversation, or for example, if I probably want to book a logistics, I just go into my mobile phone and I start interacting with you. And that is the seamless transition that's happening between what we were doing previously and what we are currently doing. Very, very insightful, Mohit, and completely echo with whatever you said. Thank you so much on that. Right. So moving on, we have Vashima out here, okay, who comes with immense experience, especially in CX in her previous organizations and also leading Amazon in a current stint. Vashima, a quick question to you, right? According to our CX trends data, okay, that was briefed by Neha a few minutes before, what we see is companies with messaging have faster resolution times, and the satisfaction criteria is also very higher. Right, and D2C sectors like especially in the e-commerce and gaming are leading this effort. What is your messaging strategy? Have you seen any surge in volume? Wanted to understand more thoughts on the same from you.
Sure. Thank you, Yashas. And, on messaging strategy, messaging strategy is more like a tip of an iceberg. What company needs to understand it, what is the entire iceberg above the water and below the water. And I'll probably, Mohit is here and I'll take example of Porter. I used Porter last year in Bangalore, and the app was such a easy, breezy, wonderful app to use that I did not even had to reach out to customer care. I did not had to use any self-service. So this is where, most e-commerce companies are, and this is a message that, I would want to pass to the larger audience here is that have your experience, the product that you're selling to the customer. It could be services, it could be a FMCG product. Make the experience so delightful that the customer doesn't need to come back to the organization itself. So I was wrapping up my house in Bangalore and I wanted to use a service, the whole pandemic hit. And I evaluated a lot of options. I was not in Bangalore, I was, managing all this remotely. And I chose Porter because the experience was very seamless there. I did not need to contact any customer service. So to me, the best messaging scenario is where there is no messaging, where the customer does not want to reach out to the customer. So when you're looking at any strategy, look at the bigger picture. How can you eliminate the option that the customer has to reach out to the customer, to the company itself? And I will quote, example, from my Flipkart days, initially when e-commerce was still kind of coming in the industry. So, Flipkart realized that the biggest contributor to the reason when customers was coming was, where is my item? There was anxiety when you buy a product. Hey, is this not a fraud? Is it a genuine company? Will the product be delivered to me? Is it 2 days? Is it 10 days? So what Flipkart did, they identified initial days, 10 years back, you would order something, you would wait for email or a courier to come in 10 days. There was a whole black window. To some extent, it still exists with speed post or, government organizations. So think of the journey from 5 years back where you ordered from Flipkart and you had a 4-day dead window. You wouldn't know where your product is, or you would get random SMS. But now, as soon as you ship a product, you know which seller it is from, which city it is from, which warehouse it is going, how is the entire journey. So the messaging has been converted into anticipating your customer needs, focusing on, and there are multiple ways to identify that. You can look at your contact center data, identify which are your bigger problems, try to solve for that. Now, this is something which most companies are doing. And you can only get so much more better. It's only how much mileage can you get by looking at your existing data. What the bigger picture is to understand voice of the customer. So, there is an Oppenheimer strategy, I'm forgetting the exact name of this law. So back in World War II phase, the US government, the Allied forces, they wanted to identify, how do you want to model your airplanes? So they wanted, because if you have a heavier plane, which means it's safer, but it means it takes more fuel. So they wanted to identify which parts of airplane to safeguard against, for potential failures and, loss of pilots. And the strategy applied was that you look at the planes which has the maximum on the surface area where the maximum bullet holes were and fortify that area. But what exactly was identified is that the planes that did not come back were the planes. So these were the planes that who actually came back, but they fortified the planes that did not had less bullet holes, because it meant that these were the planes that went down. So it is looking at below the tip of the iceberg, what is missing. So a lot of times most company gets wrapped at just looking at their data, identifying what their current customer experience or contact center data is saying. So companies needs to invest in identifying what the customer wants, looking at an outside inside approach, like doing NPS surveys. I'm a big supporter for NPS surveys, or understanding what the customer is saying. A lot of times owners of department within organizations, they get wrapped in their own myopic view, forgetting what the larger customer wants. So reaching out to customers through, it could be your market research studies, it could be NPS, and obviously your contact center data, but supplementing it with other outside in view, and then identifying where the problem is, and then working towards solving for that problem. A lot of time what I see, contact center organizations, they try to find a solve within their own self. They don't reach out to the larger business, larger company to identify, to solve for that problem. Like in back in those Flipkart days, 30 to 40% of the calls were, hey, where is my order? Now, the typical solution would be, have a quick answer. Within 2 minutes, an SMS going that you will get this product in 4 days, 5 days, or a very smartly trained agent answering your call. So this is a very tip of the iceberg kind of solution. The bottom solution is that having the supply chain visible to the customer so that there's no anxiety. The customer doesn't have to reach out to you for that answer. So that is one part of the question that you answered, what is the messaging strategy should be. So the messaging strategy should be to identifying root causes why the customer is coming to you and then providing solution to them even before they come to you. Now, if any case they do come to you, so how the industry is evolving is earlier it used to be one solution fits all. Then currently it is more about personas or creating responses which suit to certain cohorts of customers. The future of messaging is, or reaching out to customer, it's about individualized customization. It's about identifying what your customer wants and then responding in that format to him. Like, for example, younger customers, your millennials, they don't want to have any physical contact, be it voice or emails with the customer. So devising self-service strategy for them. But let's say an older customers who are typically 40 or 45 years old, they want that comfort of speaking to someone and validating that information. So identifying what is your customer, personalizing that information, like, hey, this is a millennial and he buys tech products. So identifying what he wants and creating that messaging style for him, or understanding that, hey, X customers is very anxious. Anytime they buy, they reach out to us. So creating messaging information, understanding the customer needs. What is the trigger point that the customer wants, and then providing information, proactively preempting, understanding their needs. So, it could be any messaging channel. It could be phone, chat, email, WhatsApp, but it has to suit the needs of the customer.
I completely agree with you, Vashma. In fact, you touched upon multiple topics, right? Okay, number one, it's important to look at the bigger picture rather than probably focusing on one single item and seeing how exactly we can solve that. That is point number one. You also spoke about how exactly the mindset is for various generations. Millennials expect a different way of customer experience, whereas probably a person who is 70 years old expects a different way of personal experience, right? Third thing that you importantly touched upon is how about being proactive rather than being reactive, right? Where instead of me reaching out to them, how would it be if the companies themselves reached out to their customers to probably give all the information, right? It is phenomenal to definitely understand all of these from you, Vashma, and super insights over there, right? Just being cognizant of the time, Nisha, do we have more time, or wanted to seek your guidance over there?
I think you can have another round of questions and then we can wrap up, Yashas, if that's okay.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nisha. And just moving on, right? Somil, probably I'm just curious to ask you this question. CX leaders cite the ability to adapt to the evolving needs of customers as the biggest pain point in 2020 and the highest priority going forward. So what we have seen is CX is absolutely important for every single organization and has become the highest priority. Do you agree with this? And if not, what was your biggest pain point? And how did you overcome any challenges that you actually came across?
So I don't think consumer needs have only evolved in 2020. That's actually, when you say that consumer needs have evolved in 2020, you are actually softening the blow. The needs have just accelerated with the pandemic being the catalyst. So the acceleration has been the pain point and not the evolution per se. In fact, we all were gearing for evolution and not for accelerated evolution. I'll put it that way. Our biggest pain point has been similar to most players in the consumer good industry, which is supply chain disruption because of the pandemic, and especially if you have your sourcing skewed in certain directions, then and if you don't have a backup plan, then only God could have helped you during those days. And being in a packaged food and beverage industry, we saw huge uptick in demand as consumers upstocked initially. Also, consumers were looking for known brands versus local products, which is where packaged foods and beverages, play a big role. However, our products are also so that is one end where we see the uptick. I'm addressing the volatility bit. The other end is that our products also service the food service and hospitality industry, which was completely shut. The reality is that you have a different packaging format serving both the demand points, and that goes completely for a toss because of the lockdown, because of the pandemic. Now your packaging supplier were already impacted by the lockdown, so to ask one demand points packaging supplier to ramp up the business suddenly, you can ask the other guy not to supply because that's not a demand, but to ask this guy to ramp it up suddenly is also something, you know, especially if you are skewed on certain suppliers, not going to happen. So this made us actually wonder that while we want accelerated growth with or without pandemic, our supply chains are more attuned for steady state of growth. That was a dichotomy that hit us hard to be personally hit me really hard that, you know, I mean, even without the pandemic, I wanted to grow accelerated, but I could not have done that because my supply chain is not geared for that. So how we overcome this challenge? Well, there is hardly that we could do in short run, to be honest. It's not a server that if you upgrade it and suddenly from a lap transaction date starts managing Covert transactions from tomorrow. Yeah, it's not a server that just upgraded thing and, you know, enhance the internet bandwidth and maybe you are done. It's not that. The physicality of the task makes it really impossible to tweak things in the short run. However, for the long run, we are working on crunching our forecasting analytics. That is, we are now bringing in nuances on a real-time basis and not, and obviously with the interface, with the technological interface and interventions, and we are not waiting for quarterly reports. So this is done by, as I mentioned in my earlier, you know, response as well. We are automating end-to-end selling process, which throws real-time anomalies or, you know, trends on consumer demands and helps us tweak our supply chain accordingly. We're also creating smart hedges on our sourcing options. We are not letting ourselves now skewed in one direction. We are creating multiple options there as well. In fact, what we are now realizing is, and this is something which is very critical for all of us who aspire to deliver superior CX with the passage of time. But the next level of CX is actually not coming only from, you know, putting efforts on the CX front. It is actually going to also come from integrating your efforts towards what I call as VX, that is enhancing your vendor's experience, so that they are also adequately passionate and invested in evolving your CX journey.
Absolutely, Somal. Okay, absolutely. In fact, the vendor experience is something that is becoming super, super crucial, especially in these challenging times. Thank you so much for that, Somal. Moving on, Mohit, a quick question to you. Over the past year, especially considering the COVID, right, there's been a lot of changes, especially changes in our working environments changed significantly, right? There were layoffs. Okay, we were all asked to work from home. All of a sudden, remote support challenges in many cases, and so on and so forth. So, what do you think your agents are they well situated now to support your customers from wherever they are? And how about your managers? Do they have the right tools in place to probably monitor how the performance is, how the customer experience is, and so on? So, what are your thoughts on that, Mohit?
Sure, yes. So before I answer that, I mean, just wanted to thank Washima for her generosity with the praise that she heaped on our services, etc. I mean, always a delight to hear a happy customer, and it means a lot coming from somebody who heads the experience at Amazon, because I mean, Amazon is the epitome of the customer experience. So thanks, Washima, really appreciate it. So to answer the question, Yeshas, while we so when the pandemic started, honestly, we I think you know, during the March itself, when we had those first signs of, you know, 10, 15, 20 cases creeping in, I think our CEO being a little, I think he went into a little hyper kind of a mode. I mean, probably had that kind of a foresight that, hey, it's not really going to work out fine, and India is going to go under a lockdown or something like. He anticipated not this long kind of a lockdown, etc., but he anticipated something of that sort would happen. So right in, I think we got that piece a little bit right, in the sense that we started working on moving or enabling work from home for most of our agents right in the March itself. So I remember, I think in the first week of March, we started that mandate that let's ensure that all people are able to work from home. And one of the key challenges in doing that was, while all of us had laptops, etc., and it was pretty easy for us, the real challenge was really migrating the customer experience, and in our case, telesales team as well, right? And because no laptops, no computers, no Wi-Fi, the environment at the home is also not very conducive many a times, basically. So I think what Somil touched upon earlier, empathy helped a lot there. And also, I think we set out a process, etc., took out office laptops and took out Office desktop, migrated all to the places of our agents, etc., set it up there and started experiment with that. So by the time the first 1 day lockdown had come, we realized that this is going to how it is. This is how it is going to be, and then we started working. So we had a little bit of I would say lead time there, just purely because of what our CXOs felt. But I think after that also it took a lot of time to everybody really getting adjusted to that whole tech, etc. The tech was also not figured out as to how do you transfer the calls, etc., and all that. So it took a little bit of time, but I think we were able to eventually make it work. On the manager bit piece that you asked, that how have we been able to ensure that the managers have the right kind of tools and resources to hire, train, etc. I think it's still a little bit evolving, to be honest. I think we have to make some bit of progress there, etc. And I think that the real challenge has been not really about the training bit of it, but really about engaging the employees, etc., especially who have joined. Because I mean, luckily for us, and I say this with all the humility, that we did not have to let anybody go, basically. It was, I think we were able to survive this, and now we have doubled our team from the pre-pandemic levels, basically. So when you add such a large team, it becomes difficult to really percolate your culture, etc. So that has been a real challenge, basically, and we're still trying to really figure out as to how do we do that. I think in my mind, no tool can do that. It's probably just about interacting it, etc., and being probably being more open, being more available all the time to talk to them. So yeah, that is what we have been trying to do on that management piece, as in how do we groom and grow the next set of leaders, etc. But I'll be very honest, I think we're still trying to learn and understand how do we make this work in the best manner.
Perfect, Mohit. Thank you so much. I think all of us are in the same boat in that journey, and just keeping a watch an eye on the clock. Washima, a quick question for you. Okay, before we wrap up the panel discussion. So getting budgets is probably to invest in CX technology can often be a big challenge, always, right? But we know it's definitely worth it. So we have always seen the CX champions are 7 times more likely to significantly increase their CX investments in 2021, and in doing so. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yashas, I'll keep it small because I know we are going over time. But I think my 1 cent would be data. Metrics, so numbers. So you have to have any investment decision. It's like when you are buying something, you also see what is the value getting out of it. Like when you buy a jeans, you're spending 5,000 or whatever amount on it. You see, will that give you the value? So when the same principle that when you go to your leadership, say, hey, I want to X investment. What is the value that you're giving at? And that value has to be translated into a number. You can't say that, hey, this will increase customer satisfaction, increase sales. Try to get numbers out of it. That NPS, and again I'm quoting NPS. Try to relate how will it improve your NPS, or try to relate how will it improve conversion into sales. Now these are the uber 2-3 metrics, like conversion in sales and conversion in higher customer satisfaction. Or let's say if you have vendors or seller partners, get those numbers ready. So these are your end metrics. How do you derive to those metrics? So again, I would go back to the voice of your customer program. Try to, this is what I have done in my past organizations when I wanted to get investments, for my initiative, is try to draw your customer lifecycle journey and the processes that you are running, identify what the pain points are, and then relate those pain points to whatever gaps in the businesses are. And then you can identify that, hey, if we launch this initiative, this is the pain that it is going to remove, and this pain can be translated into XYZ metric, and this XYZ will result into your customer satisfaction or your revenues or your seller satisfaction. So it is very critical to identify what initiative that you're planning to do, and if you can, run a pilot. Try to see to show that movement. So I want to keep it short. If it's numbers.
No, I totally agree with whatever you said, Vashma. Data is extremely important, right? And as long as you have the data to back you up with respect to the kind of investment that you're asking for, then it's always justified. Because whenever you go for it, is the first question that is asked is what is the value, what is the return on investment? on this particular initiative. And if the data is giving you that particular result, nothing like it. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, esteemed panelists. It was absolutely a pleasure interacting with each one of you, and definitely a lot of learning personally for myself. All right. Nisha, over to you.
Thank you so much. And thanks once again, everybody, for being on this call. I'm really sorry that we've overrun, but again, if you have any questions for Infobip, Zendesk, or Freshworks, feel free to contact our team at CXM Events, and we'd be happy to set up time one-on-one sessions with our partners. So thank you once again, and thank you to all our panelists and partners and speakers and attendees for your time today. I hope you found this session useful, and we hope to have you on our next sessions. Thanks, everyone, and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Ganesha.
See you. Bye. Thanks, Shrikant.
Hey, thanks, Nisha. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me over.
Thanks for your time here.
Okay. All right. I will drop off now. Yeah.
All right. So.
Okay. Bye.
Everyone. Bye-bye.